Tell me a story, Daddy.
What would you like to hear?
Something with a princess or a fight with knights.
How about I tell you the incredible tale of the kingdom's fortune?
I haven't heard that one before.
No, not many people know this one, darling.
Why not, Daddy?
It's a secret, and the people who run the kingdom don't like people to know about it.
Why not?
Well, I'll tell you the story and you'll understand why.
Okay, Daddy, tell me the tale.
Once upon a time, there was a land of people who worked hard, but enjoyed life and had time to spend with their friends and families, and life mostly rolled on from year to year as it ever had. The people traded goods between each other for what they needed, and for the work they did. Mr. Miller traded flour for meat with Mr. Butcher, and Mrs. Orchard paid her workers with fruit, so they could get what they needed by trading with other people.
But didn't they have money? What if Mr. Butcher didn't want flour from Mr. Miller?
Hold on, darling, don't spoil the story.
Sorry, Daddy.
It's all right. One day, the wise men in the kingdom had an idea. Instead of trading what you had for what you needed, why not trade what you had for promises made of paper and metal? Promises that were stamped as legal by the king's court, so now the kingdom's people could use these promises to trade for what they wanted.
But isn't that money? Money is made from paper and metal.
That's right, Miss Clever. The king's court called these promises money.
But how did they know what a promise was worth?
Well, they used something that never rusted or decayed away, gold. That's one reason they thought it was so precious. It never changes.
How do you mean, Daddy?
I'm getting there, sweetie. The king's court used the weight of some gold to decide how much everything was worth, and that applied to money also.
Sounds fair, Daddy.
Yes, it was. But then one day, a very clever businessman had a bright idea. He thought, why don't I look after people's money for them and make them pay me a little bit in return?
That's a good idea. You need somewhere to look after your money. We need it to buy things.
Trading goods had worked for thousands of years. Money was much easier to use, but the people could manage without it, my angel.
I suppose.
But the man's idea didn't stop there. He went further, thinking, sometimes people need a big sum of money to start a business or buy something expensive, and they don't have enough. I can lend them some of the money people have asked me to look after, and he called this idea the bank.
But Daddy, why did he lend other people's money away? It didn't belong to him.
No, it didn't. But the chances of everyone wanting their money back all at the same time were so small, it was safe for him to lend a little bit of what was in his bank.
How much did he decide to lend everyone?
7 times what he had in his bank.
What? But what if people wanted their money back? He couldn't pay them.
No, he couldn't. And sometimes the people got scared about how safe their money was and wanted it back. He had to close the bank because he couldn't pay them all at once. That was called a run on the bank.
So did the clever man go out of business?
No, because he also charged people who borrowed from the bank. He called this interest.
So he lent out other people's money, much more than they had give him to look after, and made his customers pay to do it.
Yes, but he never made it clear what he was doing. Would you borrow money from the bank if you knew it didn't belong to them, and that they were lending out far more money than they really had?
No, I never would, Daddy.
But the people in the kingdom trusted the bank, because the king's court passed a law throughout the land that banks could do this.
There was more than one bank?
Oh yes, darling, lots and lots of banks. The man who created the bank became very rich, and the king's court made him pay them so he could earn a living this way. They called it tax. But the man was still making so much money that lots of other people set up banks too.
But money is supposed to be used to trade goods and pay people for work they do.
Yes, darling, money is a value system.
But all the extra money the banks were making, it was extra money.
Do you mean money that couldn't be accounted for with goods or work that people were doing?
Yes.
The king's court called that inflation.
But how could they explain it? It isn't real money.
I'll give you an example, sweetie. If I have 10 tomatoes to trade, we need £10 of money to trade them. So 1 tomato costs £1. Now, if the bank adds another £1, we have £11 in the value system.
But there are only 10 tomatoes.
Yes, so to keep every tomato costing the same amount, someone would have to pay £1 10 for a tomato, when it was £1 before.
But that isn't fair, Daddy.
No, it isn't fair.
Why didn't the king do something?
Because the King's Court was making a lot of money by taxing the banks and everyone else for the money they were making. So he let it happen.
So did the people have to work harder to pay for food?
Yes, I'm afraid they did. Even though there was a huge amount of money going around, the people of the kingdom had to spend longer working and had less time to spend with their friends and families. They couldn't even afford to buy their own homes or even rent a home of their own. And the more money there was, the worse inflation became. So the King's Court started paying a lot of people to balance how much money was being made with how much tax everybody had to pay and how bad inflation was. They called this the economy.
Because money is a value system.
That's right, my love. The money in the system had to be accounted for by goods to trade and the work people did.
But didn't anyone realise what the bank and the King's Court were doing?
No, I'm afraid not. They were all too busy trying to earn enough money to live that they had to trust the king and his court to know what they were doing and do what was best for the people.
Didn't the king try to change what was happening?
Well, with the amount of money it ended up costing to do anything, the king's court had to borrow money from the banks to run the kingdom.
The King's Court sounds evil. They sound...
Corrupt?
Yes, Daddy, corrupt.
Well, I don't know if they were, darling, but to let this go on and let the people of the kingdom get into debt sounds like a corrupt thing to do. What do you think?
Yes, Daddy, I agree with you. So how does the story end? Did a knight in shining armour slay the bank's owner and teach the king and his court a lesson?
Nobody knows how the story ends. Yet.
The people of the kingdom sound like slaves to me.
You could say that, yes, but they didn't know it.
Because the banks and the King Court didn't want them to know?
That's right.
Hang on, Daddy. The kingdom used pounds and pences, didn't they?
Yes, that's right.
And we use pounds and pence, so...
Don't you worry about that. It isn't important. Oh, look! Your Princess Dolly light. Isn't it dazzling and glittery?
Yes, but...
Don't you worry about the kingdom. Look at the show on the screen, your favourite. Feel how relaxed that mug of cocoa is making you. Look at the shiny. Don't worry about the rest of it, behind the curtain.
But, Daddy...
Rock-a-bye baby on the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall. And down will come baby, cradle and all.